Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, big news on the front of international peace is the North African Sudan, the next state to normalize with Israel. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Abbas issues dismissal of the recent Israel-United Arab Emirates peace deal. And finally, one of the tastiest reports we've had lately on the program, ILTV takes you for a pickle like no other. To begin, the IDF once again conducting late-night air raids and strikes against terror groups in Gaza on Tuesday. These latest retaliations in response to rocket launches towards southern Israeli civilian populations, sending thousands of Israelis running to shelters across the region. 2 little girls getting injured while running for cover, receiving treatment later in hospital. 39 fires were also sparked in Israel as well Tuesday by the continued and growing use of incendiary balloons or kites flown indiscriminately into Israel from the Strip. 2 additional explosive devices attached to balloons were also discovered, police sappers responding and detonating them far from the public. The Palestinian Hamas terror group, for its part, claims to be instigating the recent violence in attempts to convince Israel to give in to their demands, such as opening the Kerem Shalom crossing, clearing more Gaza imports, extending Israeli work permits to 100,000 Gaza residents, greenlighting UN projects to boost employment, and extending the Gaza fishing zone to 20 nautical miles. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, on the other hand, is speaking with regional council leaders in the south, saying that Israel has raised sanctions on Gaza while the IDF has been operating against Hamas and other terror group targets in the Strip for the last 10 days.
אני חושב שהחמאס יעשה טעות גדולה מאוד אם הוא ימשיך בזה. הוא מקבל כבר עכשיו אינדיקציה לאן זה יוביל. הוא בוודאי יזכור לאן זה הוביל. אני מקווה שגם הג'יהאד האסלאמי יזכור לאן זה הוביל. אנחנו לא חסכנו בשום אמצעי, לרבות במקרה הצורך של התפתחות המערכה, גם של סיכולים ממוקדים, וגם היום אין לנו מגבלה כזאת.
Well, true to Israeli predictions, the latest peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates apparently is indeed inspiring others to follow suit. Sudan seemingly the next in line, officials saying that there's no more need for any enmity, calling the new UAE normalization a brave step that charts the right path for the rest of the Arab world. The Sudanese Foreign Ministry spokesperson is saying that the North African country and Israel are already in the midst of peace talks, and that Sudan would not have to sacrifice its values for such a deal. Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu agreeing, saying that the whole region would benefit and that Israel will do whatever necessary to turn this vision into reality. But possibly to keep things mum, Sudan's acting foreign minister is denying knowledge of any peace talks with Israel, saying he was surprised by his spokesperson's claims and that the spokesperson, Haidar Badawi Sadiq, had no authorization to make such assertions. Meanwhile, Sadiq explains that he spoke as a private citizen and not as a government official, adding that the government should respect the people and tell them what's going on in secret regarding relations with Israel. Now, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is also finally weighing in on the Israel-UAE normalization in his first public remarks since the agreement was announced. But to the international community's surprise, Abu Mazen says that actually he's not too worried.
نحن لسنا قلقين بما يجري هنا وهناك من ترهات وخاصة في المرة الأخيرة في الأيام الأخيرة عندما أعلن عن اتفاق ثلاثي بين الإمارات وبين إسرائيل وبين أمريكا وهذا الاتفاق قائم على تطبيع العلاقات بين إسرائيل والإمارات.
Writing off the historic agreement as nonsense, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is addressing the new Israel-UAE deal in a meeting at his presidential compound. The meeting, including in rare form, members from Islamic terror group and rival party Hamas. But in line with assertions from Israel that this peace is just the first of many soon to follow, most Arab or Muslim states in the region are in support of Israel and the Emirates, quietly or otherwise. In fact, Palestinian officials have now called for an urgent meeting of the Arab League over the deal. few countries responding. A truth that Abbas is calling a stab in the back of the Palestinian cause. As for Israel's position, though, a snag in negotiations, centering around the reported sale of F-35 fighter jets and other advanced American arms to the Emirates. UAE officials insisting that Israel not only knew about but okayed the sale as part of the normalization. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Benny Gantz, on the other hand, are denying such reports, saying that they stand firm against those stipulations.
אני אומר לכם שאסור לקחת סיכונים ביטחוניים. במידה אני חוזר ואומר לכם, צריך לקדם את ההסכם הזה. אני אשוחח עם שר ההגנה של האמירויות, כפי שגבי שוחח עם שר החוץ של האמירויות, נתמוך במאמץ הממשלתי הזה ונוודא היטב שהאינטרסים הביטחוניים שלנו יודעים להישמר. אפשר, רוני, לעשות הסכם שלום תוך גילוי אחריות ביטחונית. לא אפשר. צריך לעשות הסכם שלום תוך גילוי אחריות ביטחונית.
ישראל לא נתנה, בניגוד לטענות בשמאל ובתקשורת, הסכמה כלשהי לעסקת נשק כלשהי בין איחוד האמירויות וארצות הברית. להפך, ארצות הברית גם הבטיחה וחזרה והבטיחה שבכל מצב היא תשמור על היתרון האיכותי של ישראל. אלה העובדות.
So what will happen with the sale of American arms to the Emirates? And what can or should Israel do about it? Joining us to discuss is founder and president of the Jerusalem Washington Center, Gideon Israel. Gideon, thanks for being with us.
Sure.
All right, now, we've been hearing a lot of conflicting reports about this, as we just heard from Benny Gantz and Netanyahu, that this provision doesn't exist or shouldn't be happening. And then yet others, both in Israel and in the United States, are saying that, it will happen, or at least it should be on the table. Who should be believed?
Well, I think everybody should be believed. I think everybody's telling the truth, and I think everybody's carefully worded what they said. I'm sure there's no provision in the agreement, and I'm sure there's no secret provision, and I'm sure that Netanyahu will oppose any sales of F-35s to the UAE. But what's going to happen is, after Netanyahu opposes it, or has already opposed it, the United States probably says, okay, it's in our interest to strengthen UAE and also to keep selling military hardware so other countries don't fill in that void. So how do we go from here? And then the Israelis probably say, okay, if you're going to give F-35s, then we're going to need this missile and that type of hardware. So is
this just a public negotiation, basically?
No, I don't think it's a public negotiation. I think it's just that the report was leaked and Netanyahu is denying it, but there will be some flexibility. And later, I'm sure Netanyahu will announce, or someone will announce that, okay, Israel, let's say allowed, because the United States doesn't need Israel's permission, but Israel is okay with this sale, and the United States is going to keep that qualitative military edge by selling them this weapon.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask. Is it even realistic to ask the United States to deny such a trade from the UAE?
You can ask whatever you want, but it's certainly realistic, and it's certainly in Israel's interest. But also by asking it, also kind of gives Israel a little bit of leverage, because by saying this bothers us, so the United States, in order to go forward, they'll say, okay, so how do we compensate for that? And this whole qualitative military edge thing, it's one big negotiation where it's ongoing, and as the years go on, okay, the Arabs purchase more advanced equipment, and how does the United States compensate for that? So it's not something in stone.
So what are the pros and cons, really, of the Americans giving advanced weaponry to the UAE? From Israel's perspective?
Well, first of all, the United States has about 3,500 soldiers in the Emirates in various bases. They have joint exercises with the Emirates. Certainly, as a partner in the fight against Iran, so there's an advantage for Israel, for the United States selling this equipment. But also remember that if you're the country that sells another country military equipment, you also have a lot of leverage over that country, because they always need spare parts, and you always need to make sure that if a country says, listen, we're not going to supply you spare parts, so after a little while the weapons, you can't use the weapons because you need those spare parts, and you have to look to another country. So by the United States selling weapons to the Emirates, it gives the United States sort of leverage over the Emirates and sort of what they do with those weaponry.
Wow. All right. Well, it's going to be really interesting to see how this negotiation, as we're kind of calling it
I've
now.
already told you what's going to happen. So I've already told you.
Basically, whatever they want to happen will happen, it sounds like. All right. Gideon, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, well, aside from the possible trade of advanced military arms, the announcement of the Israel-UAE normalization also comes with huge opportunities in the private sector. The question is, what are these opportunities exactly? CEO and owner of the Tamir Fishman investment house, Eldad Tamir, is here with us to discuss. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
All right, so what are the prominent business companies operating in the 7 principalities that make up the UAE?
Well, the economy used to be oil-based, but it's really changing. I think the basics of their economy is, first of all, oil. It's still 25% of GDP, but a huge trade center to the Middle East. And I think this is also the opportunity for Israel, is not only to look at oil, but to look at this agreement as a bridge between the new two worlds.
And so, what are, apart from oil, as you said, what are some of the what are some of the bigger areas that are being focused on in the UAE then?
Well, let's look at the different interests, and then we can come out to the products. I mean, they have a lot of money. I mean, that's a product for them. Oil is money. We're a high-tech centric country, and high-tech is, drinking a lot of money to create value. So that's a fit. That's a match. I mean, today Israel is based on American money and Chinese money, which is becoming a worldwide issue. And I think, this could be a great fit. They need technology, they want to learn, they can invest in Israeli high-tech companies, and we can buy oil from them. Apart from that, we can export almost any products to the Middle East through the gate that they have there.
So I want to dive into that a little bit more. What are some of the investment opportunities for Israelis to actually move into the UAE and maybe establish businesses in the UAE? And is the government maybe incentivizing that in some way? Are they going to offer tax breaks or, to set up local bank accounts, things like that?
Yeah, I don't know what the tax will be, but I assume it will be, a minimum tax because it's a tax-free zone. Most of it is a tax-free zone in the AUE. So we need to look at this as a major, kind of a major market for two things. Basically, any product that any Israeli companies that sell today around the world can sell into a huge community in the Middle East because it goes through the free zone and gets out with the label of the free zone. So it's kind of disconnect from Israel. So that's a huge opportunity. So it's any product, it's basic products, it's technology, it's machinery, and we have all of that here. And the biggest idea is high tech, of course. So we can attract money and we can sell high tech products to the Middle East. It's kind of a dream through the AOE.
Tons of opportunities, a lot to look forward to. Eldad, thank you so much for being with us. In other news, among all the exciting opportunities now opening up between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, the most pressing is, of course, cooperation in the fight against COVID-19. The Israeli Pluristem Therapeutics and Abu Dhabi's Stem Cells Center getting set to collaborate in developing cell therapies as well as regenerative drugs for severe diseases like the coronavirus. The two companies having just signed a non-binding memorandum of understanding involving the exchange of research results, patient samples, and testing equipment. Similarly, the Israeli Terra Group and the UAE's Apex National Investment have an agreement to collaborate on COVID-19 research, as have Israel's Rafael Advanced Defense Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries with Abu Dhabi's Group 42. Now, as Israel works with allies both old and new in tackling the coronavirus, the cases over here just don't seem to be decreasing. So where do we stand now? Nittany Manson has the latest.
There are just 2 weeks until the new school year kicks off, and Israel's rate of COVID-19 infection does not seem to be decreasing.
ביצעתי 1,000 בדיקות, אני אקבל 10% מזה. אני אבצע 2,000 בדיקות, אני אקבל עדיין 10% מזה. לכן אני מציע להתייחס לאחוזים. האחוזים לצערי לא יורדים, הם בסביבות 10-11%.
Israeli Health Minister Yuli Edelstein urged Israelis not to become complacent as he toured a mask factory in the West Bank. And speaking of testing, a hospital in Netanya that has run out of testing kits, saying they have a new outbreak of cases. Laniado Hospital has confirmed that one of its positive cases returned to Israel on a flight from Belarus on August 13th, but not specifying whether or not the 50-year-old man was the origin of the latest outbreak. Meanwhile, Israelis may not be as far ahead as we thought when it comes to a vaccine. The head of the National Research Laboratory leading Israel's race for vaccine says Phase 3 of testing may not begin until 2021. Professor Shmuel Shapira, director of the Defense Ministry's Institute for Biological Research, saying, "I think that our goal is not to be the first, but to get a good vaccine for the citizens of Israel. We hope that the second phase will be finished towards the end of the year, by the end of December. The third phase is much more complicated and requires time." On Tuesday, Israel recorded 1,644 new cases, bringing the total number of cases to 23,779. The death toll has surpassed 700. Regardless, the health ministry announced that cultural events will be allowed to return as of September 1st.
היום זה להתחיל את המתווה הזה החל ב1 לספטמבר, כי לא רק מהסיבה של לראות בינתיים מה קורה עם מצב התחלואה, אלא גם שדורש התארגנות, התייחסות של משרדי הממשלה האחרים, גורמי אכיפה, שינוי חקיקה שמחייב לעבור בעניין הזה, זאת אומרת שינוי תקנות, לא חקיקה, וכל הדברים האלה שנדרשים כדי ליצור את התשתית למהלך הזה, ואנחנו לא רוצים לעשות אותו מהר מדי.
Israel's culture and travel sectors are beginning to heal. Regardless of whether or not they'll remain on the mend, Israelis are eager for life to get back to normal. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
September 1st is just around the corner, which means concerts, theater, and other cultural events have been approved to return to the lives of Israelis. Finally. But with that said, COVID-19 is not going anywhere anytime soon, meaning there needs to be a safe way to attend these kinds of events. While the Jerusalem municipality is transforming its central Safwa Square into a COVID-safe outdoor concert venue, social distancing and all. The venue will be able to host audiences of 600 in individual capsules of 20 people. Jerusalem's mayor, Moshe Leon, said that the Jerusalem municipality will not give up on culture and the obligation to make it accessible to the general public through a variety of creative solutions. In a joint exercise by the Israeli and German Air Forces, for the first time, Israeli Air Force planes performed an honorary flight called Memory of the Future over the Dachau concentration camp, in which more than 30,000 Jews were massacred during the Holocaust. The Air Force also passed over the Olympic Village in Munich, where the 11 Israeli athletes who were murdered in 1972 were abducted. Uwe Becker, former mayor of Frankfurt and president of the German-Israeli Association, joins us with more. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, shalom to Israel.
Thank you. Now, there's no doubt that this is an important event that symbolizes the long road that we've come down since World War II. How do you feel when you watched these Israeli planes in the sky?
Well, it was a very emotional moment to see the Israeli Air Force together with the German Air Force flying side by side and demonstrating that today Germany and Israel are so closely together, and not only in words, but in action. And that when we speak about the reason of state in Germany for the existence of the state of Israel, this is a double sign from the German to the Israeli side that we stand on the side of Israel, even with our forces, and that Israel is spending Germany so much trust and so much belief in the new Germany, in the democratic Germany, that this is a very, very strong signal and sign of this established friendship over decades.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that there is a special connection between Israelis and Germans that is reflected in this cooperation and in other areas?
Well, I think the question of relationship always belongs and means how people get together. And as president of the German-Israeli Society here in Germany, I see a lot of cooperations. I see a lot of networks that are established, if it's between schools, if it's between universities, in so many ways on the cultural level, the social level, many other places. So it's deeply felt in the heart of so many Germans that we work for this very special relationship that also is a gift by the state of Israel towards the country that once murdered 6 million Jews all over Europe.
All right, now I see that you were in some of these photos enjoying, this amazing memorial. What do you think should be the message that we take from this special collaboration?
I think the message is that in today's world, the cooperation is more than just regular cooperation between two countries. The history that is fulfilling bond around us is something very special. We feel the responsibility as Germans from what has been done in the past to create a common future and stand side by side, and that when we say never again, now also in this image of aircraft flying side by side. And this means that we stand together for the future of each other, and that especially also the Germans are not only with their words in the state of reason clear to the state of Israel in this existence, but also in helping and supporting and showing solidarity. And all that comes together with that what was shown in the sermon.
All right, Uwe Becker, thank you so much for joining with us and sharing about this amazing experience.
Thank you. All the best.
All right, now by a show of hands, who doesn't love pickles? That's what I thought. But I bet you never had a sourized cucumber like these, because an American expat in Tel Aviv is taking pickles to a whole new level. I'm talking shawarma, falafel, and even sabich flavor. Lauren Izzo reporting with the Pickle Jar.
Shawarma and amba flavor, falafel flavor, spicy mellow yellow. American-Israeli Jake Harriet's specialty pickles have become kind of a big deal. Located in the Jaffa Flea Market, the Pickle Jar is Israel's premier boutique pickle shop. And trust us, not only is it unique, but it's really tasty.
You'd think I own a pickle shop. I must have loved pickles my whole life. No, not really. Probably 6 years ago, maybe I had my first pickle. I didn't know that it was a cucumber. I'll be honest, I was an extremely picky eater when I was a kid. I was eating French fries, chips, and that's it. My buddy turned me on to pickles. He's a green thumb. He's growing stuff in his garden all year long. So when he has cucumbers, he's making pickles with them. When he would make pickles and bring them around, me and my buddy, me and my friends, we would inhale this jar on site and shake him like more and more and more and more and more. So, I moved to Israel. I couldn't fit him in a backpack, so it's like I had to learn how to make the pickles that I love. First job here doing customer support, just speaking English 8 hours a day, not fun. And I was making batches of pickles for people. I made one batch, 2 jars, second batch, 4 jars, making 20 jars for people. And it's like, this is where I get the idea to make pickles for a living. Pickles is a Jewish thing in America. I come over here as a Jew, it's Jewland, there's no pickle shop. So I put it all in. I built a pickle store, I quit my job, and I started selling pickles. The fermentation thing as a whole is getting huge in the States, and I think the world, a very big trend. And the reason is because it's healthy, and it's also fun. Anything can be pickled. Honestly, I could pickle this couch. I just need a big jar. I have a customer, he eats a whole jar of shawarma pickles in 5 minutes. I eat my pickles like a snack.
The Hebrew word for vinegar is chometz, and salt is melach. Those are the 2 most popular methods for making pickles.
Chometz pickle more is because it's more of a vehicle for flavor. I can put more things into it. When I have Israeli customers come in, they say, b'chometz or b'melech. Yeah. And they want the salt brine pickles mostly, from my understanding, because the chometz pickles here suck, because they're horrible. But I do salt brine too.
Whether you like them spicy, sweet, salty, or tangy, the Pickle Jar is here to scratch that pickle itch and show you that when it comes to the brine-based snack, the possibilities are truly endless.
Any other ideas for upcoming flavors?
So I'm thinking of a Pickle Rick flavor, and so maybe sabich one day.
Lauren Izzo, ILTV.
I'm a little bit afraid to know what a Pickle Rick flavor tastes like, but with that, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight, you can expect mostly clear skies and a low averaging at 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow, another clear and sunny day in Israel, no surprises there. The highs hitting averages of 92 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. Oh, that is a very, very shocked dog. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.4 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.